Did you know that the Jewish calendar, so often discussed, studied, and even admired, contains hidden anomalies that rarely reach the public eye? At first glance, it appears to be a solid and ancient system, carefully preserved across millennia. But when examined closely, cracks begin to appear. Beneath its apparent precision lies one of the most controversial enigmas in biblical chronology, the so-called lost years of the Jewish calendar. When scholars place a traditional Jewish timeline alongside modern historical and archaeological data, an unsettling question emerges. What year is it really? Does a calendar that counts time from Adam onward accurately reflect known historical events? Or has history itself been compressed, altered, or reinterpreted? At the center of this mystery lies a major chronological discrepancy between traditional rabbinic dating and modern academic chronology. One of the clearest examples concerns the destruction of the first temple of Jerusalem. According to rabbinic tradition, this catastrophe occurred in 422 BC, corresponding to year 3338 in the Hebrew calendar. Yet most historians, relying on Babylonian records, archaeological findings, and astronomical data, date the destruction to 587 or 586 BC. This single difference already reveals a gap of more than 160 years. This divergence is not isolated. It originates largely from a rabbinic text known as the Seder Olam Rabbah, compiled around the 2nd century AD. This work presents a compressed version of Jewish history that sharply contrasts with conventional chronology accepted in academic circles. The most dramatic compression occurs during the Persian period. While mainstream history holds that Persian rule over the region lasted roughly 207 years, the Seder Olam reduces this entire era to just 34 years. This compression triggers a cascading effect throughout the timeline. One of its most significant consequences concerns the duration of the Second Temple. Rabbinic tradition states that the Second Temple stood for 420 years. Modern historical analysis, however, estimates its existence at closer to 589 years. This difference does not merely affect dates on a chart. It reshapes how biblical events are interpreted, taught, and understood within religious and cultural supported by a wide network of sources that reinforce one another. Persian, Babylonian, and Greek records provide detailed accounts of kings, battles, and reigns. Clay tablets preserve administrative documents, taxation records, royal decrees, and diplomatic correspondence that allow historians to reconstruct political timelines with remarkable precision. Perhaps most compelling are astronomical records, precise observations of lunar and solar eclipses that enable researchers to anchor ancient events to fixed and verifiable points in time. These celestial markers function as objective timestamps, independent of religious interpretation, offering a rare level of certainty in the study of antiquity. The Seder Olam, by contrast, appears to pursue a fundamentally different objective. By condensing long periods of foreign domination, particularly Persian and Hellenistic rule, the text reshapes history into a theologically coherent narrative. Many scholars argue that this compression was intentional. Rather than presenting a neutral chronology, the aim may have been to reinforce Jewish identity during a time of exile, political vulnerability, and cultural survival. In this framework, historical duration becomes secondary to theological structure, and chronology serves belief rather than measurement. Even within academic chronology, minor disagreements persist. Scholars may differ by 1 or 2 years on specific dates, depending on calendar systems, accession year methods, or regional variations in timekeeping. Yet despite these small variations, certain milestones remain firmly established. One such event is the Babylonian siege of Jerusalem in 597 BC. Both biblical texts and the Babylonian chronicles confirm that Nebuchadnezzar II captured the city during this period, a convergence that strengthens the credibility of both historical and scriptural sources. After this initial conquest, Nebuchadnezzar installed Zedekiah as a vassal king. His reign lasted 11 years before rebellion provoked a second and far more devastating siege. This final assault resulted in the destruction of Jerusalem and the First Temple, most likely in the summer of 586 BC. This conclusion is supported not only by biblical accounts, but also by Babylonian military records, regnal lists, and chronological data derived from astronomical observations. When we return to traditional Jewish chronology, a different structure becomes evident. Rabbinic texts assert that the Second Temple stood for exactly 420 years. To preserve this figure, a fixed 70-year exile is inserted between the destruction of the First Temple and the rebuilding of the Second. This adjustment produces the now famous discrepancy of approximately 165 missing years when compared to academic history. These missing years are not distributed evenly. They are concentrated primarily within the Persian period, the very era most heavily compressed in rabbinic chronology. This raises an unavoidable question. If entire generations of Persian kings, administrators, and events disappear from the timeline, what does this imply about the nature of the calendar itself? Are these omissions a result of lost records, or do they reflect a conscious editorial decision made long after the event occurred? Some scholars suggest that by minimizing foreign rule, rabbinic chronology symbolically restores Jewish sovereignty, even if only on the level of historical memory. What ultimately emerges from this comparison is not merely a disagreement over dates, but a deeper philosophical divide. Is history meant to be reconstructed through external evidence, or interpreted through sacred narrative? Are calendars neutral instruments of timekeeping, or expressions of theological worldview? The lost years of the Jewish calendar force us to confront how history is shaped, remembered, and sometimes restructured, and what may be concealed when meaning takes precedence over measurement.